Welcome back, everyone, to American Government and Politics at Simmons College. I have, I think, one more comment on the videos I need to address, but I'm actually going to get to it next week, and I'll tell you why. It's because we have a quiz coming up October 5th, and I want to keep us on schedule. And we're a little behind as far as the course content goes, because I took some time last week to talk about the murder of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and some other related issues. And those are very important things, and they're very timely, and so we got into that last week. But that means that I'm going to omit a little bit of the material from the syllabus, particularly as relates to the origins of our political parties and that kind of thing. But it's still important stuff. So if you happen to read about it in the textbook, it's really good stuff. It's important stuff. But we do have a quiz coming up Monday. And I want to get y'all ready for that quiz with some of the things I talk about today. And then on Monday, just like the last quiz, I'll make the quiz assignment with a very short YouTube video and then give you 5 days to complete the quiz on time. So, that being said, we talked on Monday, or I guess I actually posted it yesterday, talked about two-party system, Republicans, Democrats. What I didn't talk much about, and what I'm going to cover in today's video, is the terminology that we use in this country, and in fact, most of the world, when talking about politics very generally. We talk about liberals, conservatives, progressives versus conservatives. We talk about left and right, left wing, right wing. What does all that mean, and how does all that fit into the framework of America's two majority parties, the Republicans and the Democrats? Well, back in 1789, and remember, you never have to memorize any years or dates for this class. It's not that kind of class. I just want you to understand the concepts that we're talking about. So in 1789, though, it's important for this little story here. There was a revolution in France, and the governing body, such as it was, the Parliament, they met there in France, and there was a big group of representatives, people who were representing the public, and there was a president who presided over this meeting, and the ones who were revolutionaries, who were not okay with the status quo, with the course of the French government, they sat on the left side, to the left of the president, and the ones who were loyalists to the king of France, they sat on the right side, conservatives, people who don't like to see a lot of change and a lot of radical discourse and upheaval within the government. So the French actually gave us this terminology of the left and the right. In modern day politics, after lots of kind of evolution of these terms, when we say someone is politically left of center, that means they're a liberal, they're a progressive. And when they're right of center, they're a conservative. Now, the two major political parties in this country, at least ostensibly, line up with those two sides. Neither of the two American political parties are extreme historically when it comes to left and right politics, but when you say someone is right of center in the United States today, that generally means they are Republican. Not always, but generally a Republican. If they are left of center, they are a Democrat. The term left is most closely associated with words like liberal and progressive, and the term right generally think of as conservative. And again, today that'd be Republican Party. Now, all of this is in the process of changing. It's so hard to predict how future historians will look back on whatever time you're living through and what they're going to say about it. But I do I do really believe that this is changing some more than it's changed in at least 50 or 60 years in this country because of what's happening with our current president. Our current president says things and has tried to enact some policies that are not just conservative, not just on the right, but on the far right. And although I would disagree with this sentiment, there are a lot of people in this country who believe that President Obama was far left, was a leftist, was very, very liberal. What do all those words mean? Now I'm going to speak, again, in very general, very broad terms. But in the United States, to be a liberal or a quote-unquote progressive politician or someone who votes for those politicians usually means that you support things like government-funded programs to help low-income individuals, otherwise disadvantaged or underrepresented individuals. Underrepresented means a group that is not demographically represented in political leadership. So who is an underrepresented minority? Well, in this country there are several, because particularly white men, but white people make up a disproportionate amount of our political leadership. And so if you're not white, your voice may not, your people who look like you and have a common background with you may not be appropriately represented in Congress or in state legislatures or in city councils and so forth. Again, this is not going to come as a surprise to any of you all, but liberals, progressives, and historically for the last, at least the last 60 years, and I would argue a little bit longer than that, that has mostly been the Democratic Party who is speaking up for the underrepresented minority, who supports government-funded social programs to help people who are disadvantaged. The other side, you have modern-day Republican Party, which is quote-unquote conservative, right of center. Remember, Democrats left, Republicans right. And those are folks who don't like to spend as much government money on programs to help the disadvantaged, or at least they think they have ways to spend it differently, that they believe, that they sometimes seem to believe will be advantageous to those disadvantaged populations. So also political conservatives who tend to want to spend more money on things like the military, and they aren't big fans of taxes. I mean, nobody likes to pay taxes, but generally Republicans and conservatives in this country want to cut taxes and cut funding to certain types of social programs, government programs, whereas Democrats, it's not so much about raising taxes with Democrats, it is about spending government money on programs that will help those who are less fortunate. Now, I'm speaking, again, very generally. Does it always play out like that? No. Republicans always say that they want to spend less government money on everything, but the actual government spending tends to be very high under Republican leadership in the United States. And Democrats say they want to help all the disadvantaged populations, but when Democrats are in power, they still pass laws that they accuse that they like to blame Republicans for, like laws that make it easier to be incarcerated, to be punished for drug crimes. And Democrats never spend near as much money as they say they will on things like Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, WIC, public education. Both parties talk a good game, but neither of them really truly enact the laws they say they will when they're trying to get your vote. Let's a little bit more about this. let's talk about very recent history. Uh, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. This is the part where if we have an in-person class, I usually ask the class for some feedback, and I want your examples, but I'll do the best I can right here on YouTube. If I ask you to name an example of a Republican politician, the very obvious one would be Donald Trump. He has not always been Republican, but he is Republican now, and he was Republican when he was elected president. Mitch McConnell, who lives not only in Kentucky, but he's from right here in Louisville. He's a Republican, a very powerful Republican senator. In our lifetime, or my lifetime, other examples would be George W. Bush. Is a Republican. Democrats, examples of Democrats. Barack Obama is a Democrat. Joe Biden is a Democrat. Kamala Harris, Democrat. So, I will tell you this, for the quiz coming up on Monday, October 5th, I'm going to ask you a little bit about this whole Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative dynamic, and ask you to name a specific issue and tell me where one of the two parties comes down on that issue, how they feel about that issue. And I'll explain that more on Monday. Don't feel any need to draft your quiz answer now. It won't be complicated. It won't take you too long to do, but it will be important and something that will test your knowledge of the class so far. So I'll tell you more details about that on Monday. For now, if you want to know more, again, there's a lot in your textbook about the two-party system and about the liberal and conservative dynamic. But I will say, if you watched the debate last night, it's kind of hard to tell who was who, other than the fact that former Vice President Biden did speak a bit about the way that Black Americans are disadvantaged. He didn't, and almost no politician ever uses terminology like ADOS, African descendants of slaves, but he was talking about that population a little bit, and President Trump, when given the opportunity, refused to denounce white supremacist organizations. Again, in our current environment, President Trump is a Republican and considered to be quite conservative, quite to the right of center in political terminology. And former Vice President Biden is, throughout his career, has been somewhat liberal, somewhat left of center, but for the purpose of this election, he is saying things that are pretty liberal, pretty progressive. So, please comment on the video. Please comment below that you watched the video. That's how you get your participation. I'm sorry, your attendance for the class, and participation points come when you leave a comment or a question. So, thank you all so much. If I haven't gotten to your comments yet, I will soon. I just want to make sure we cover enough material to get us to Monday's quiz. Then after that, I will get caught up on those. I promise y'all I'll address anything that y'all brought up. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're all safe during the pandemic. I hope you and your families are healthy and safe and doing well. And I will talk to you all on Monday.